Okay, here we are. I cannot believe that I have the opportunity to actually share podcasting information with folks from my hometown. I'm Margot Levet. I now reside in Southern California, but I was born and raised in Rockford, Illinois. So before I do anything concerning podcasting, I want to say thank you to Rockford Public Library. Thank you, Annie O'Keefe and Donna Hobson. Thank you, Odessa, Jean, and Doug Connell, who are here already. I'm going to share my screen before I go into anything deeper. We're going to go for about 30 minutes, and then I'll leave time for us to have question and answer. And yeah, we're just going to let's just have fun with it, because podcasting is fun in capital letters. It really, really is. So I hope can everybody see my screen? Somebody just want to unmute and say, yes, yay, I can see you, or?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to go ahead and get moving here. And I'll put you guys on the bottom here. So give it to me fast, the Express Podcaster Builder. I am giving you all today almost the exact class that I share over on in my academy, podcastacademyonline.com. This is something that I've never done before. They almost just give away the one of the very first tutorials. But I think it's very important that everyone understand, first of all, what a podcast is. So you'll walk away with that today, what a podcast is and what are the moving parts, because we can use podcasting to help our businesses grow, a form of communication, a form of marketing. We can use podcasting as we are learning, as we are lifelong learners, as many of us are. So I just want to welcome you. I'm Margot Levet, the creator and instructor today. And let me get this other screen up. Okay, as I said, I am the founder and creator of Go Beyond the Interview LLC. We not only podcast and teach podcasting, but we are a gateway media opportunity for others. We collaborate with we collaborate with magazines, so that when people want to be featured in a particular magazine, sometimes I have the opportunity to make that a reality for them. So I Go Beyond the Interview LLC is actually a media company now. We have podcasting and we are able to make some dreams come true for people. So welcome to podcasting. Today you are a student and we're going to give it away fast. Best thing I could have done when I lived over on the West Side. I was born on the South Side of Rockford, resided, grew up on the West Side. I never saw this opportunity of podcasting come my way. But when it did, I'm so glad that I took the bull by the horns and I said yes. I said yes, and I had podcasting for a hobby. And then when I left corporate, it became what I do. I am a professional podcaster. So let me take you on my podcast journey, because what happened for me could definitely happen for you if you so desire. Never saw myself as a writer, as an author, even though I did some freelance writing. I became an author. This is my book, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Reinvention, how I went from game show hopping to professional podcaster in 1 year. And also my word will always be reinvention. It's housed here in this Amazon bestseller, Your Amazing Itty Bitty Book of Words. Reinvention will always be my name, because I reinvented to become a podcaster at age 61. Yes, I did that. So my podcast, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation with Margot Levet. It's all about us boomers coming out of corporate, and now we want to reinvent ourselves, become podcasters, become entrepreneurs. How do we do that? And how do we learn to do podcasting from the inside out? That's what my podcast is all about. It's grown and it's on all of the major platforms. And back before COVID, when Staples had this beautiful, beautiful plexiglass office, and usually in the back of their stores, they had the spotlight space. I applied and I was able to come on and actually teach podcasting in that beautiful, beautiful space. And I put that in this slide presentation because it was one of the thrills of a lifetime. Here I am, 62 years old, teaching a room full of folks podcasting. We're doing it with the cell phone and bringing people up, and they're shaking, but they're learning. And it was so much fun. We never want to take the fun out of podcasting. I've been featured on magazines. Verkay magazine had me on their cover as WOM lead. I've spoken with some amazing people, had a chance to be a speaker. Welcome, everybody. Had a chance to speak on one of the largest stages as far as podcasting goes, PodFest. That was a thrill where I just told my story. And then the Leverage Conference, I'm the only person that ever comes on talking about podcasting. That is a privilege. It comes up once a year. And the people that put this on, they play all out. They spare no expense. And in 2021, I had a chance to be named one of 25 powerful women. That was another milestone. Keep in mind, all of this is happening past age 60, courtesy of reinventing myself. I found that I love moderating panels. I'm pretty doggone good at it also, because, when you love something and you have the skill set, you even have the gifting, it just, oh my goodness, just point me in the right direction, put a mic in my hand, and you are nervous, but then you aren't nervous because you're helping to impart information to people, to the world, because podcasting, which is audio, goes out to the world. You're never just in your own zip code. You're never just in the States. You are global. So I had a chance to speak with Min. Min come on to my show also. Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. The one and only Tim Fitzpatrick. Oh my goodness. He is a master marketer. And after he guest on my show, he started up a podcast. And this is my mentor, Brother Bedford. He is a master. What can I say? He had to come on. And next month in September, we're celebrating International Podcast Day. But, I got to do it big. So I'm celebrating on the 28th and 29th. And these gents are going to be some of the speakers. We're going to talk about our podcast journey. So why am I sharing this with you? The things that I've had a chance to do, because so many of us, if we sit outside of what I want to do, and I'm just thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it, and we do not equip ourselves, we don't invest in ourselves, then we never get a chance to realize those things that are waiting for us once we say yes. All we have to do is raise our hand, train ourselves, and just step into the arena. That's what I did. So Alignable. Some of you guys are probably a part of Alignable. That is a big growing network. And for Gardena, I was called Local Business Person of the Year in 2022, which was wonderful because I like people who are in my neighborhood and helping folks out and that type of thing. But then in 2021, Podcaster of the Year. Oh my goodness. I started podcasting in 2017. Consistently moving forward, but by 2021, here I am, Podcaster of the Year. And you think that milestone did something for me. It really, really did. So when we're building out our podcast, some of us don't care about monetization, but when I teach podcasting, I build people out the way I was taught to build it out, and build like you already have a business. I didn't really foresee being a professional podcaster. I didn't really take that on, but as I showed up and I really got my feet in the water and I learned and I test this out and I test that out, I found that yes, I can be a professional podcaster. Yes, I can interview people. Yes, I can do infomercials. So you build your podcaster with a business in mind, even if you say, I'm just going to do this as a hobby. I just want to impart information, okay? Do not play yourself cheap because you never know what's coming up next. And do not just assume that you can go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to learn how to build out my podcast and it's going to be a business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I want you to remember, Margot told you upon this day, that when you're building a business, there are many different moving parts, and you need to get with the startup experts, people like SCORE, because there are taxes and legal business structures, those things that you need to be aware of. So while you're building out your podcast, in the back of your mind, you want to make sure that you're contacting some folks over at SCORE or someplace. And no, I'm not an affiliate, but I want to make sure that while your podcast is solid, so is your business structure. Let's dive into podcast basics. Podcasting is broken up into three entities. Theory, it's broken up into mechanics, and then the technical part of it. So let's take a look at podcast theory. My question to you is, do you know what a podcast is? And I have to ask you this question because I was speaking, this was a couple years ago, with about 30, maybe 40 seniors, and everybody was just happy. And the subject matter was, I was going to tell them about being a podcaster and share some stories, because every podcaster has stories. People were in, they had a videographer, the energy's high. I'm up on the podium, ready to get started. My posters are up, visuals going, and there's one woman in the front. I'll never forget. Her name was Miss Barbara. She's waving her hand. I said, Miss Barbara, what's up? She said, Miss Margot, I have a question. I said, Miss Barbara, what is your question? She says, what is a podcast? And I fell out laughing, not at her, but I had to laugh at the fact that I assumed they signed up for a podcasting class, where I was going to talk about podcasting and share stories, that everybody knew what a podcast is. So from that point on, thank you, Miss Barbara. I always let people understand what a podcast is, because podcasts are a household name, household term, but a lot of us don't know the technical part, the theory of podcasting. So let's dive right in. What is a podcast? Podcast is audio. Now, we have people who do vlogging. That's where we have the video portion of a podcast. But a podcast in its native state, it is audio. How is it created? Right here on software using something like Zoom. There's many other things that I can introduce you to, but Zoom is a good place to start because everybody knows. So the same way I am recording this conversation, well, then that's what you do. You record that conversation, even if it's just yourself and it's a monologue, you do that over on Zoom. Okay. Now, Zoom lets you upload to the cloud, or you either store it there on your hard drive. Whichever way you do, after you download it, you've secured it, you want to send it over someplace where you can edit it. We edit because we don't want highs, we don't want lows. I don't know what she's saying. That volume is too low. What did she say? Or somebody just screaming into your ear. What we have to do when we are podcasting is make sure that we give a good experience, and editing is going to give a good listening experience. So it's very important that you upload it to editing software. And there's a lot out there that you can use, and everything is not technically challenging. A lot of it, some of it has a learning curve, but what doesn't, but it's very, very doable. Keep in mind, you want your listener who is inviting you into their ears, you want to give them a good experience. So now after you edit it, then you can't just throw it up on your website and say, okay, I'm good to go. I have my content. It's edited. Sounds good. I'm all set to go. Nah, you got to send it over to another place I call the distribution center, where it's processed. And that's the host distribution. It's where you can tell this distribution center, okay, I have my podcast. I'm ready. I edit it. Let's send it out. Send it over to Spotify. Send it over to iHeartRadio. Send it over to Apple. Send it over to Pandora. You've already told this distribution center where you want your show to go. So now you hit boom, and out it goes
Mm.
out into the world. And then from that platform, that distribution center, you have a real simple syndication link. And that link is where your information has been compressed. That's where everything's at. And you can send it out to your social media, send it over on your website. Oh my goodness. This is the distribution center is where the magic is. So that's what a podcast is. It's basically you've put out some good information, you've edited that podcast information is huge, a huge, heavy file. But when you send it to the host distribution center, you compressed it and now it's sent out to the world where you want it. But before we do anything, I always want people to ask themselves, why do you want to podcast? There's no right, there's no wrong. Nobody can answer that except for you. If you say, hey, I want to get on here and make a whole bunch of money, well, then that's your why. If you say, I want to go ahead and share my expertise with the world, well, then that's fine too. There's no right, there's no wrong, but it sure makes a big difference when you record manually what your why is. And then you ask yourself questions like, how far am I willing to go to make this podcast a reality? Some people say, I don't want to spend any money. Some people say, I don't want to spend any time. Well, if those are the things, if you're not willing to, as they say, poquito amount of time, maybe podcasting is not for you right now. So you go ahead and add that to your why. What are your boundaries? All of us have boundaries. I'm only going to record on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What are your boundaries? I'm only going to have conversations with real estate brokers. What are your boundaries? I'm only going to use Zoom. So that's all part of add that all in while you're thinking about your why. To strengthen and grow and maintain your podcast, are you willing to invest time and money? That's a big deal breaker. And you have to ask yourself that. How will you celebrate your milestones launching your podcast? And I am a big proponent of celebrating those milestones. Oh my goodness, when I published my book and I got that, I pushed the trigger in the host distribution and my podcast, my very first podcast went out global. I went out and bought a painting. If we had more time, I'd flip this around and I show it to you. Something I've been looking at for a long time. It says, be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. I went out and I bought that so that I could look at it. I could be reminded. Setting my soul on fire, setting the souls of others on fire about podcasting and being an entrepreneur and reinventing themselves. That's a part of my why. I'm very passionate about why and asking yourself these questions. So now, imagine your podcast. Before you run out and buy a microphone, before you go out and do anything, imagine, get to yourself, explore your why. And then ask yourself these questions that I just put to you. And then who is your podcast listener? That's very important. My strategist always said, Margot, you are the avatar of your listener, So you build off of who you are and give your listener a name. Name them. What do they like? What don't they like? What are those boundaries? When are they going to listen to the podcast? You want to think about all of those things while you are imagining. What are your expectations? What are your expectations? Because the last thing that you want to do is to get into podcasting and put work and time and money into it and not have your expectations met. One thing I want you to know is that podcasting is long tail. It really doesn't happen. You don't get the listeners. You don't get the monetary feedback immediately. You have to know that. But if your expectation is, okay, I'm going to give this 6 months, I'm going to give it all I got. I'm going to podcast every day, or I'm going to podcast twice a week. I'm going to put the pedal to the metal. My expectation is that I'm going to build this thing up till I get 50 downloads each and every time I put out a podcast. Those are your expectations. You're going to put into place those things that are going to cause you to meet those goals, those milestones. Because as I said, the last thing you want to do is come up with a deficit concerning not meeting your expectations. Maybe you can't right away. Maybe not meeting them means I have to go ahead and tweak some things. But your why is always going to keep you focused. It's always going to be your North Star. Okay, I didn't meet my expectation on this, but why am I doing it anyway? Let's tweak this. What are your desired results? You want to ask yourself that. And how are you going to measure your success? Are you going to measure it by downloads? Are you going to measure it by feedback from your listeners? Are you going to measure it by traffic that is drawn to your website, or traffic that's drawn to your brick and mortar store? Nobody can answer that except for you. One thing about it, your host distribution center is one place where you can measure the success of your podcast, because they have analytics there. We're going to tell you what part of the world people are listening. You can even niche it down to what state, and niche it down to what city is really listening to you. So your host distribution center is going to give you some measurable analytics concerning your podcast, which, it keeps the fire burning. It really, really does. It does a lot for a person. So now we talked about your why, and I say that why is powerful, but sometimes you need a backup. My why is that I am passionate about this thing of podcasting, and I already told you what it's all about. But the backup to my why that keeps it strong, when I get kind of weak and I say, I don't know if anybody's listening, I'm kind of tired. This is real talk. I don't know if this is worth it. I didn't meet my expectation. I got the violin out. Days you get the violin out, you want to have your backup to the why. You know what my backup to the why is that I spent a whole lot of money learning what I know today. I spent a whole lot of time getting to meet people who could introduce me to people who love what I'm doing and support what I'm doing. The backup is that in reality, I'm reaching people, and people have found the audacity and the grit to say, I want to do what you're doing. I want to do that. I want to make an impact. So that's the backup to the backup, the backup to my why, and the backup to the backup. You have to have that. So in class, we do belabor that. That is your why, and the backup to your why. Oh my God, you have to have that situated. You really do. So that's the theory of podcasting. Now let's go ahead and dive into the mechanics. This is the gas in the car. These are the pieces that you really should have in place if you're going to go ahead and get going and build on a firm foundation. First thing, you want to decide upon your show name. What are you going to call your name? And the name of your show, that turns out to be real estate, your digital real estate, because you're going to end up having to purchase a domain name. And then later on down the road, you're going to want to purchase that trademark. So, that's big business big doings going on, deciding upon your show name. That's the first thing that you want to do. Okay. You can play around with it, but don't play around with it too long, because if you move from one name to another show name, you don't want to confuse your listeners. All right. You're building a business. You're building a following. So think about that show name. And you want to decide upon your show structure. Are you going to put out a talk show, a monologue? Are you going to do this with a co-host? You want to think about all those things. Let's all make sure that we are on mute, please. Thank you. Thank you. We want to make sure that are we going to be a podcaster or are we going to be a vlogger? No right, no wrong, but just decide upon that show structure the same way you had to decide upon, some of you, whether or not you were going to be a solopreneur or a LLC or an S Corp. You do have a show structure that you need to think about. All right. People will ask you, and it's okay to mix it up, but just have that structure in mind when you're building your podcast. And then you want to decide, where am I going to do this, record this podcast? Am I going to do it in my closet? Hey, don't laugh. A lot of big shows have come from the home closet. Mine did. Okay. The acoustics are throwing there. They are wonderful up in there. Or are you going to go to a studio, which is very doable, but it gets a bit expensive. And I like to teach people how to do podcasting on a dime, because as you grow, that's when you amp your game up, as they say. That's when you buy the better equipment, the mic and all that stuff. Start out small. So I show people how to actually build. And if you have a room that has carpeting and you have you have good lighting, you have good stuff on the wall so that it's not bouncing, so that your ceiling is not 6 feet high, then use that as your home studio. Don't go out spending money that you don't need to spend, okay? Decide upon how often you're going to publish. Are you going to have a daily show? You're going to do it once a week, once a month? All depends on what your show is all about. Some people that have graduated, they came on because they just want to situate their expertise. They want to put their monthly show in a newsletter, and that's fine. Some people have come on to learn because they want to start a podcast in their business, in their enterprise, something where they can have close communication with their vendors, close communication with their employees. It just all depends. Now, myself, I just want to do it once a week because I can keep up with that demand. That daily pumping out a show, that takes a lot of work and a lot of stamina. And I just don't say that that's a good way for a person to start, because you're learning your way around podcasting, and to put that demand upon yourself to pump out a new show every day is really quite grueling. And I don't think that it's realistic. Okay. Your show graphics. People are going to recognize you and your podcast by your show graphics. Hey, I went to a professional podcaster. I went to a professional photographer, got my headshot, went to a graphic artist, and they set up my graphic. And everywhere I go, hey, I know you. I went to a meetup 3 weeks ago, my first live meetup. And people said, yeah, I know you. I know you. You look just like your picture, because my picture is on my show graphic, and I show that to you at the very beginning. So you definitely want to be sure to pick out a show graphic. If you're just starting and money is tight, I do say go over to Canva. Canva has a arsenal of covers, show graphic art cover that you can choose from, and that will work until you get situated. I would use it for a couple of weeks, a month if you have to, okay? But if you can't hire somebody to do it, you can do it on Canva and get away with it for a while, okay? Your intro and your outro. How are you going to introduce your show? Some people just have a little bit of music and they jump right on in. And some people have no music at all. They just jump right on in. It's their voice. It's the same way every week. And like I say, no right, no wrong, because podcasting gives you an opportunity to be your authentic self. And if that's not you opening up with a good peppy jazz tune and doing a teaser and doing something else and then going into your show, that's all right. That's okay. Whatever you want, but just think about this, okay? Because when you have these ideas already envisioned, then when it's time for you to put the pieces together, it's not so hard. Outro, same thing. Are you going to close out your show with music? That same music that you use for your intro is fine. Buy one track and then you can just use it both times. But you also want to make sure that you tell people at the end of your podcast what you want them to do. Go over to Apple and leave and rate and review you. Go over to your website and buy your book. Maybe you want them to be a possible guest on your show. Hey, go on over to my website and fill out the blank. We'll get back with you. Always have your call to action, CTA, in your outro. Okay. Whether you're matching it up with music or you're just announcing it yourself. No right, no wrong. But if you are using music, oh my goodness, get the royalty-free music. And I teach people where to go so that they don't have problems. And I myself, when you say that it's free, I'm still kind of, I don't know. So I myself, I buy music so that I can use it any way I want to. And we take a deeper dive into that because people have been shut down. They have been given cease and desist letters. And if you've been podcasting and you have 20, 30, 40 episodes out, can you imagine having to go back and remove that music, intro, outro? That's, oh no, we don't even have to get into that. And like I say, decide how often you're going to publish, and on what day you're going to publish. What day is that host distribution center going to push out your podcast? Is it going to be on Tuesday? Are you going to be able to have everything up and ready to push the button on Fridays? It's totally up to you. Okay, there are stats that you can pay attention to that will give you some insight as to, they say Tuesdays are when people are listening most of the time, but I myself, I go with Friday because I know that people are looking at, they're going through their social media, they're calmer on the weekend, and that's when I get my largest amount of traction. But no right, no wrong. As the marketing people always say, you test it out. You test and you test and you test, okay? No right, no wrong. Now, we talked about editing, and IALA 2 is something that I teach people to use. It was created by a podcaster in the UK, and I watched this tool grow. It's very user friendly, and I am an affiliate of IALA 2 because I do believe in the product. It's the one that I use. There are a couple out there with big boy bells and whistles, and I just never got into that because if I can give my audience a good listening experience with something that's easy to use and I can almost do it on my sleep, why would I go with something that's going to give me another learning curve? You know, we're always growing, but you're always going to want to have your own editing tool, the one that you are very comfortable with, because as I said, editing, you don't want to skimp on that. Okay, here we are. Step 3, equipment, technology. So we went over the theory of podcasting. What is a podcast? The host distribution. We want to go with our why, the backup to our why. That's all part of the theory of podcasting. We put the gas in the car with the mechanics. We looked at how often we're going to podcast. We looked at the fact of, are we going to do a solo show? Are we going to have a co-host? What's the name of our podcast so that we can move on and think about our domain name, which is our digital real estate. That's all part of the mechanics. And now here we are with the technology. So you definitely want to go ahead and make sure that you have yourself a high definition camera. I say from the very beginning, you want to make sure that you have an HD camera, something by Logitech or something pretty good, because you're going into podcasting as a podcaster. But guess what happens really, really fast? Other people see your body of work and they will invite you to guest on their podcast. So if you have a crappy camera or you have a bad mic, guess what? That's a big turnoff. And you're going into this thing giving their audience the best listening experience also. So get the best HD camera you can get. I wouldn't say spend $200 or $300 for it. $50, $75. Logitech has their line of cameras. I've had my HD camera for, I don't know, 4 years. It hasn't failed me. Keep the lens clean and you can just roll on, okay? Same thing for, you want to make sure you have a boom arm, and this is a boom arm right here, because you don't want to have to, myself, I don't want to have, I talk with my hands and I don't want to, last thing I can do is hold a mic, and I sometimes bump the desk. So to have a mic that's on my desk is not a good idea for me. So most people that I speak with, they say the boom arm is their best bet. It just works for them. So whatever works for you, you want to go ahead and purchase that right away. And boom arms do come in packages also. And they're, plus if you have to add it on, they're not that expensive. Also, you want to make sure that you do get a good mic. The ATR 2400, 2100 is a good solid mic. It travels well with you, and I can give you more information about that. I'm looking at the time and I want to wrap this thing up, okay? So we went over the equipment, and those are the basics. Did you notice that I didn't tell you anything about a mixer and all that stuff? You don't need it. Technology is so, with the editing, oh my goodness, and even Zoom, you don't need a mixer and all of that stuff, okay? So you want to decide upon what microphone you're going to buy. You want to decide upon your headset. Are you going to have earbuds that connect into the bottom of your microphone, or are you going to have a headset? It all depends on what you're comfortable with, okay? All depends. And I say, listen to a podcast. Don't just go, you learn a lot when you're listening to other people's podcasts. So how do I make money as a podcaster? Let me go ahead and go over that real quick. You make money by teaching podcasting, or you have merchandise that has something to do with podcasting. Write a book about podcasting. Maybe you can get a bunch of interviews together and put them together in a book and sell that. Host a conference or a workshop. There are myriad of ways that you can monetize by being a podcaster. Affiliates, oh my goodness, we can definitely go into affiliates, which is once you get started in that could be very, very strong. So there are ways to make money in podcasting. Quality is something that you can, let me slow down. Quality is something you can commit to on every single piece of content that you produce. And that came from Evo Terra, who is a gentleman who did podcast number 40. It's in the record books, and he never looked back. I have a free resource page for folks who want to know what equipment to buy that's cost effective and efficient for them. And I want you to remember, podcasting is a long-term commitment. And I want you to create your why and stick with it. You can always seek and get help. You can always seek and get before your audience. Use your voice. Whatever your industry is, they need to hear you, okay? Relationships. Podcasting gives you an opportunity to build relationships. Use them, okay? And you do have the thunder. You have what it takes. And definitely have fun. So we made it. Welcome to the basics. And now you can put the pieces to podcasting together. And that's exactly what we do at podcastacademyonline.com. I'm Margot Levat. My information is here. I can put it in the chat. I'm looking at the time. We have, it's now about 1:45. I'm going to stop my share and come out. And I'm open for questions. Anybody have any questions at all? I guess you can tell I love podcasting. Hey, I can talk about it all day and all night, and I so appreciate sharing this out. So, Miss Odessa, I see you smiling.
Yes.
I'm
really enjoying this.
Good,
And
good.
you have basically went into a lot of the things that I have been thinking about for the past month. So when I stumbled across that you were doing the podcast, I was like, oh, I want to get in on that so I can listen to what she says. And I really appreciate your time. I really do.
Well, it's an honor and it is a privilege. Anytime I told my strategist, anytime I get a chance to talk about podcasting, you know, I'm right. Hey, raise my hand. What time you want me there?
Yeah, you're giving me the motivation to really try, you gave me the information I need on getting started, the equipment, different things like that, because it's more than just putting a mic in front of you talking. See, I'm a singer. I have my own live band, and that's something totally different, which I wanted to get more into the podcast because my kids always say, Mom, you have so many people that like to hear you say things or talk or whatever. So either way, I want to try to get started in on some podcasts and see how I'm going to work out. And I really appreciate you today.
Well, you know what, Odessa, the thing, yeah, you need to get started on that because what I failed to bring out is that podcasting, once you put that podcast out, you are putting your footprint in history. Podcasts will
Okay.
be found years from now. I mean, because the people in Europe will find you. Oh my God, I have a story about a woman who put out a podcast 4 years ago. 4 years ago. And do you know, I ran across that podcast and I can testify to it because I was the guest on the podcast. Do
Oh,
you know
wow.
that it surfaced and I was on her show because I wanted to test the waters and I wanted to meet her for one thing. And that podcast is still around. So I can testify podcasts don't go anywhere. They are, as we say, evergreen. So you are a singer, you have paid your dues. Now, let the world know who Odessa. Odessa, what's your last name? What's your stage name?
My stage name is Miss Diamond Jones.
Okay, Miss Diamond
I sing
Jones.
I sing a lot of genres of music with my band, whatever people ask us to do. But I'm known more of like an empress of the blues.
Oh my. Wow.
I like to sing even like Nina Simone. I like to sing Dinah Washington, Billie Holiday. I just like singing the blues. So there's so many queens of the blues in my city in Illinois that one of the jazz blues singers that have traveled the world, she gave me the name of the Empress of the Blues. So I'm going to take that and run with it.
Wow. You know what? You know what you want to do is go ahead and try to find out whether or not that domain name is available. I would jump on that. Okay. And then consult with a trademark attorney, entertainment lawyer, and find out whether or not you can trademark that, because you know what's going on with what's her name? Mariah Carey. She's trying to be the Christmas queen or something like that. And two other people said, hold up, Mariah, it ain't happening. Hey, so-and-so and so-and-so dubbed me as that. So I don't know how that's going to turn out, but this would be so exciting.
You really given me the motivation today to put my next foot forward in it, and I'm just starting to feel really good about the idea that actually my kids gave me. Mom, you need your own podcast. I was one of those people, what is a podcast, and my kids had to kind of break it down to me and like, well, yeah, and you could even have guests on to sing. You could have, people on to talk. Mom, you could just do so many things with it. So, the youngsters, they can really kind of put you out there, So I'm going to give it a try. It'll take me a little while, some months or so, but I'm just going to start putting step by step together.
Well, get in contact with me and see because I'm going to have a class.
I did get your information that you did show on the end too.
Okay, and I'm gonna practice what I preach. I'm gonna put it in the chat, my the office phone number and my email, and go ahead and get in contact with me, because in September I'm going to start another class, and it's the people that I really vibe with are boomers, because we are understanding, I want to do this, and Margot, if you did it, teach me how to do it. So that's what's coming up. Hi, Donald. Thank you. That's what's coming up in September. And September is International Podcasters Month. It's
Okay.
the 30th, but I'm over the top because I love podcasting. So I'm going to be celebrating it on the 28th and 29th. But I'm going to go ahead and do a 4-hour workshop on podcasting, just so people can really they can really put their pieces in
We can
place.
get our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Listening to that. I retired from the Rockford Public Library. So when I saw this podcast program, which I get sent a lot of things, I was like, So really it's like through my job that I retired from 10 years ago through Rockford Public Library. I said, I'm going to listen in on that podcast, So that's why I'm here, Miss Lovett, because I was like, oh my God, they're going to have a host for a podcast, how you get into it. And it was just right at the time when my kids started talking to me about it. So that's why I'm here today. Wow. And I have enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm feeling really motivated now to kind of like start to getting it to going now. So yeah. That's
why next month, in honor of all the others who have taken the deep dive and said, hey, I'm signing up. That's why it's in keeping with podcast day, which is the month for me. That's why I'm going to bring a class, a special class. And it's one that's not on my website, because I understand time is of the essence for some people. So it's going to be a 4-hour workshop with a book. Yeah. And for people who have pretty much made up their mind, I'm doing this, just show me, refresh me on the pieces, and we'll walk right through it. We won't leave with a podcast, but you will technically have a podcast, because you'll know how to put all the pieces into place, which is monumental. Because people don't, if you have a wrench and you don't know how to use the wrench, what good is it?
It's good to have instruction, from someone that's more experienced. That's how we get, our instruction, and to know how to move accordingly. That's it. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. And Donna, Donna, you are awesome. Thank you for enlightening us on podcasting. Is it costly starting out from the beginning as a podcaster? No, really and truly. And people will say that you have to have $300-400. No, because I know that for 100, because inflation, and it used to be you could start for under 100, but after the class and the equipment, you're probably going to be able to get started for 115, and that's going to be your equipment. So I would give, and if I'm teaching it, it all depends on what package you choose. But get the equipment, you don't need to spend a whole lot. No. And I say don't spend a whole lot of money, because I've had students come in and they have actually spent a bunch of money, and the mic is in the closet. They're disillusioned. Yeah, I've had people in the class because they just lost track, and the instructor just didn't take them where they needed to be. So I say start out small. You do have to buy your domain. That is a given. You have to have a domain name. You do want to go ahead and purchase. I say purchase your own royalty-free music. So there are some things to consider. Of course, your mic, your stand, and that type of thing. But no, it's not.
But you don't need a mixer, like you were saying. I was looking at all this equipment, so I'm like, I won't even need that. She said I won't need that.
No, don't buy it. It's starting out. No, it's too complicated, and you want to hone in on your craft. You want to hone in on being a podcaster. I wouldn't even worry about the video. Let the podcast be what it is, and that is audio. Yeah,
that's right.
And audio. If you're doing it in Zoom, now you do want to go ahead and download the video for a later date. I would keep that on my hard drive, but right now concentrate on the audio and get that down real good. Can you show
Mark.
slide 16 again? Let me see here. Let me share my screen, and I'm going to go, Jean, I'll go to slide 16. But Donna said, that's what scares me, spending a bunch of money and it ended up in the closet collecting dust. Believe you me, it won't happen, not with me, because I don't believe in it. I just, that's a waste, because I graduate podcasters. Let's get over here to slide 16. People want to do all kinds of things, but I'm out to graduate podcasters.
Yeah, everything don't work for everybody. So
no. And that's where you need somebody who has studied the different podcast, the host distribution centers, because one may not work for another. Editing tools, that type of thing. So this is the editing. This is the slide 16. And it's all about Alitu. And like I say, I use it. It is the editing tool that works for me. And the podcast host that I suggest is Buzzsprout or Captivate.fm. But I'm going to have to add one more to that list, which is Podbean, because they are making some major strides. So I'm going to upgrade this slide before the next presentation. So I hope that gave you the viewing that you need for slide 16. ALITU is the name. And we'll have, oh, yes. Yes. Rockford Public Library. Yeah, did everybody see that? We'll have equipment in the new building. That is so exciting. Oh my goodness.
I want to thank you so much, because when we first spoke and you volunteered your time, this is a great impetus. We may be able to get some equipment before the new building, because as you know, supply chain, blah, blah, blah. But I think you're encouraging that we could build a podcasting studio somewhere in one of our existing buildings to get people in there, especially Odessa. You get to use it first. I'm saying it just because I think there is excitement in our community. And again, being able to provide it for free, right? People can try it out. If they wish to purchase their own, that's great. We'll encourage that too. But just to whet that appetite, get people familiarized. And you certainly have set the stage, my friend, and we really appreciate your kindness today.
Oh, no worries. This is what I wanted to do. Looks like we're about 5 minutes out. Thank you. And Annie, this is so cool. This is so cool. Oh my goodness.
Those are some of my ex-employees that I worked with.
So, oh yes. Well, you know what? I think that this is going to be.
They're going to give me the option to use the equipment too. I love that.
Yes, of
Does
course.
it get any better than that?
Hi.
Oh, man, this is. But you know what?
Thank you so much. It was so nice to be able to know all the different pieces to this, and I didn't know all of them. So you just enlightened me, and it was very, very helpful. So
yes.
Thank you. Well, that's why I came, and it was a thought that I followed through on, and so here we are. And Annie, if I can help when the new systems facility gets up, if you want some help, I would
love that.
Okay, well,
I would love that. Yes.
It's recorded right here. I volunteer to help you, because you know what?
Awesome.
If we have a whole lot of high-tech stuff right from the beginning, it may intimidate people. But if we have it user-friendly, this is what you have to do. This is all, first of all, put your feet on the ground, settle down, as they say, and you'll be all right. And it's this, and it's this, and the steps in the process. And people, they thrive that way. They really do. When you see that mixer and that soundboard, the slider and all that, oh my God, I'm dead in the water, and all that stuff that Odessa's used to seeing in the recording studio.
Right.
Yeah,
that stuff
when
is
I'm recording
intimidating.
music, when I'm singing with the band, and that is just so much more that you got to deal with, No. This, I believe in not spending a whole lot of money, get your feet in the water,
fall in love with your why, what you're doing,
Wow.
the reason why you're there. You can always build out, but start out with the basics,
Yeah.
So
Then
that's
you
it.
can move on to more sophisticated or whatever.
Oh,
You get
yeah.
in the big time then.
Well, there is sophisticated out there. There is, but you know what? You can go a good long while before you have to do that. So don't feel pressured by, ooh, that shiny object, and oh, that looks good, and
Pricey, and you really don't need it. You can
Yeah.
start small.
Start small. Don't let
Yeah, that's what
anybody
I intend to
shame
do.
you.
Yeah.
Always start small on only thing that you don't want to start small on is on your vision for what you're doing. Your vision for
Okay.
becoming a podcaster, start that out big. Start out big, but your equipment, small. Start your voice out big and loud and confident.
Be heard. Build your
Be
base up.
heard.
Mhm.
Be
Yeah.
heard. And you're going to be all right. You are absolutely going to be all right. So,
Okay.
well, I don't want to overstay my welcome, but oh
Thank
my
you
goodness,
so much.
you're very
Really
welcome.
enjoyed your information today. Got me
Good.
motivated.
Thank you so much, Margot from RPL.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk to you
Thank you.
soon.
Indeed. All right, I'm going to stop the recording and
Okay.